Hey, what is up guys? Kolst here. So United in Stormwind is out, and it is, as expected, a very refreshing new meta, which is a great thing to see, of course. And I wanted to make this video to just talk about some of the big surprises that we've seen over the first partial week of this meta. There's a couple big overperforming cards that are doing much better than me and pretty much everyone predicted. A little bit of an update on class balance and just a little bit of the mini meta update. With that, let's get right into these overperforming cards, our first topic here. And there is one clear standout here, and is a card that probably very few people expected, which is Deep Run Engineer. So this card is currently the top performing card in the entire neutral set, and one of the best neutral cards actually in the game as is. So if you're not familiar with this card, it's a 2-mana 1/2, which sounds terrible, right? Battlecry, discover a mech, it costs 1 less. This was a card when I saw it initially, I was like, why is this card in this set? It doesn't seem to fit, but you know, it's doing extremely well. So I think the biggest thing that I think people missed with this card is that this thing, you know, I think when you see the word discover, you're trained to think, okay, this is probably a bad tempo card, but it'll provide value. And you look at the mechs and you're like, well, there's Claw Machine, but you know, outside of Claw Machine, there's not a lot of value. So it's a value card that doesn't generate value, so it doesn't seem very good, right? But that's exactly what you're missing here. This is a tempo card. This is an extremely good tempo card, not a value card. And sometimes you get Claw Machine and it's also a value card, but really this is a tempo card. And there's been some pretty hot debate over this card, just like how much it's an RNG card that's gonna like high roll, low roll, screw you. But let's go right into that and dig right into just the cards you can actually get here. So these are all the neutral mechs you can get and not shown on the right here. There's also Circus Amalgam, but so there are 11 of them. And you look at these and you're like, well, Explosive Sheep, that's usually pretty bad. This card is usually pretty bad. This card usually pretty bad. This card usually pretty bad. And this card, honestly, in my experience, has been pretty good for me. But like, you know, it's thought of as a bad card at least, right? But you can pick it sometimes when you need it. But the point is, so, okay, 5 out of the 11 cards are bad, right? Or at least situational. So you're thinking, well, looks like you're just getting a lot of crap, right? Well, not really. Keep in mind, you have 3 choices, right? So even just looking at these cards, the odds of you actually missing, like quote unquote missing, is less than 10%. And again, we're just looking at the neutral cards. That's when you go to the next point, which I actually don't think is as big of a deal, because already here, this is my main point, but also you can then go to the class cards and realize, well, especially Warrior. Warrior is the big one where you get a lot of pretty good cards here, right? And then Rogue has a card, Priest has actually a bad card, Paladin has 2 pretty good cards, and Hunter has the greatest card, right? So that's half the classes get something pretty good, but really for the most part we're still just talking about the neutrals, and just off of the neutrals this card is actually doing extremely well. You can even look at Priest, where, you know, Priest only got like 1 bad option, but this card's doing extremely well. So even in Priest, for example, it's actually significantly outperforming Pandora and Porter because, you know, tempo is good, and this is a tempo card. Don't really think of this as a value card. Think of this, if anything, this thing is almost like the new Imprisoned Vile Fiend. It's actually the card you want to get out early so you can get that cheated out mech to get that tempo benefit. And just back to that RNG debate, as I said, like this thing is actually pretty consistent. Like there's like a less than 10% chance you can miss. But I mean, you know, there are cards that you wouldn't see the same argument exaggerated so much for that were far less consistent. Examples were Wandmaker and Pharaoh Cat. So I really don't know why people like want to double down so much on this, but you know, to each their own. And with that, let's move on to the next card, which was a card that I personally definitely underrated. Everyone knew this card would be good, but I think what's shocking about it is that just quite how good this card is, and it is Ramming Mount. So this card, of course, I think everyone was pretty familiar with this going in. It was going to be, you know, a lot of people viewed it as the boogeyman, and I think, well, I'm here to say this thing is even scarier than I thought it was. So this thing, if you're not familiar with it, 3 mana, give a minion +2/+2 and immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a ram. There were 2 things I think I was wrong about with evaluating this card. Number 1, how easy it is to actually get a minion to stick. It's just very easy. A lot of times in my experience playing the games, that sometimes it's pretty easy to just like on a random turn 5, turn 6, just get a minion to stick. It's just, there's so much less initiative than before that you can just randomly have minions survive. And then you have a target for this. The other thing is, once you actually hit this on something, there's like almost no way to actually kill it. Even if you put this, I've been told like people just put this on a 1-drop, and that 1-drop will literally be enough value to just carry them because it deals, you know, 3-4 damage to everything it hits, right? and it never dies. And outside of silence, because there's just so little rush and a lot of classes have so little removal, a lot of times this thing will just never die and then you just win. So just to give a sense, like this thing is performing at like near Ysera levels. This thing is one of the most objectively strong cards that's ever been printed in Arena. It's that good. And with that, I think those were the two biggest surprises to me. There were a couple other legendaries, which, you know, are less common, but just cards we knew that would be good, but just surprised by how good they are. First one is another hunter card, the Rat King. So this thing, I think, as there is so little rush, just having like a 5-mana 5/5 rush is actually already just really, really good. And you know, this thing just provides that inevitability again. Like, you'll have minions die eventually, you'll get multiple procs out of this if the game goes long enough. It's just, this thing is, again, performing, I think actually it was even better than Ramming Mount in the stats, which is terrifying. So yeah, it's just really, really good. And the other one is another kind of similar card, which is Varian, which is another kind of slow rush minion, but also a value card, where this thing draws you, you know, up to 3 cards from your deck. The fear with this card was that, particularly if you don't get like Rush Divine Shield, it seems like it wouldn't be enough tempo. But the thing is like, then it'll always have taunt basically, and then it's just, it's an 8-mana 7/7 like rush taunt maybe, and then, you know, it draws you 2 cards, and it seems like a slow play, but really because the power level is down, that's really not such a slow play anymore, even, or at least it's fast enough that it's not gonna like lose you the game, right? So this thing has been doing extremely, extremely well as also, even though, you know, particularly there aren't a lot of divine shields in the game, but I guess it just doesn't need it. And with that, that's really all the cards I wanted to talk about. So let's just talk really quickly about the class balance. So there's not a lot to talk about here because frankly, it's almost the same as it was. I was kind of expecting, you know, with the stuff that's been going on in Blizzard HQ, that something like, you know, arena balance probably wouldn't be the highest on their list and might get dropped. And it seems like that because it seems like they really haven't changed anything at all other than adding the new cards. So classes are in more or less the same order. I think the thing that's, you know, surprising, because this is something, you know, if you're not aware, Blizzard completely controls the balance of Arena through what they call micro adjusts, which is essentially individually controlling the appearance rate of cards in the draft. So, you know, if they want to make a class better, they get more good cards, and if they want to make them worse, they get less good cards. But since it doesn't seem like they did any of that, essentially what the change we saw from before, it seems like, is really the classes that actually got good cards are the ones that moved up. So we're talking like Warlock, Hunter, Paladin. These classes moved up significantly, and I think Demon Hunter as well. But, you know, classes that particularly didn't get good cards, Rogue and Priest, are not doing quite so well. And even Mage as well. And with that, I just want to talk a little bit about the meta. So I only have so far played on day 1. I'm going to start playing some more games right after I record this video, actually. But one of the things that was clear is that, you know, the power level is definitely down. The sets that left, Skullman's Academy and Ashes of Outlands, of course, had a lot of very impactful and good cards in them. So just replacing those sets with sets that were not printed in the last year definitely reduced the power level. And particularly a lot, again, as predicted, a lot of those neutral rushes being gone, Broomstick, Rusty Raider, Fishy Flyer, really, really changed how the game feels. And I think this is true, again, as I mentioned before, even more than we'd predicted. I think one of the other impacts of this, because the power level is down, is that there are still a lot of really good broken cards, a lot of them being legendaries. So these kinds of legendaries are even more oppressive than before. If you see someone play a Ysera or Ysera off of Lady Prester, however it is, good luck. It's just really hard for an average deck to compete with any of these powerhouses nowadays, a lot more than before. And then the last thing I want to talk about was just the epic bugs. So if you're not aware, if you've been wondering why you see so many South Sea Scoundrels, Darkwind Rabbits, Carnival Clowns, Primordial Protectors, etc., it's because there's a bug that's been infecting the game for like the last 3 months or so, at least, maybe more, where a lot of these epics are just for some reason showing up like common. And that was another thing that we were thinking. We know they've been aware of this for months, but they haven't fixed it yet. And what's weird though is that one of the things you realize is that for some reason, because Warrior wasn't affected, because Warrior wasn't microdusted, this happened during the microdust patch of last cycle, and because Warrior wasn't microdusted, Warrior didn't get impacted by the bug. And certain classes got impacted by the bug more than others. You'd have to like look through and see all these things. But the interesting thing, so there are 2 takeaways. Number 1 is that the bug is still there, if you were wondering. And number 2 is that the bug does not actually affect the new sets, the sets that rotated in. So you can actually look through, I'm not going to go through everything, but like I'm looking at the new set, for example, you don't see this bug at all. The epics are actually, not very common in decks as we jump through these classes. But if you go back down to, Forged in the Barrens, for example, then suddenly, this bad example because they don't have good cards, but, you suddenly start seeing weight cards. So it's Forged in the Barrens and Darkmoon Faire that are still affected by the bug. The other sets are not affected by the bug. But anyway, yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about there. So I guess I'm just curious to ask you guys, like, how has your experience been in the new meta? Do you like it more or less than the old meta? Any of your thoughts there? Do you think, I didn't mention in this video, probably could have, but, should Arbor Up be made a little bit less common? Maybe we should do something like that. Are there any cards you think should be banned? Talk about anything you really want about this meta or anything else, because all comments help the algorithm and, say whatever you want. But yeah, thanks a lot for hanging out, everyone, as always. If you want to see some of our runs, of course, you can check us out on Twitch or hit the like button, subscribe to support the channel and all that stuff. But yeah, thanks a lot again, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.